Hola, ¿qué onda? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Qué hay de nuevo? ¿Cómo andas? ¿Bien? ¿Ocupado? ¿Tranquilo? Which of those? Well, welcome to today's lesson. Today we're going to be learning how to master Spanish verb tenses. Now, it's very often students come to me and they say, Nate, Spanish verb tenses are so hard, there's so many, how do I remember all of these verb tenses? It's overwhelming and confusing. I have no idea where to start. Well, in today's video, we're going to go over the 4 most important tenses in the Spanish language, where if you really get these down as soon as possible, you'll have a pretty good grasp of the majority of Spanish conjugations. Now, what I mean by that is, yes, there are still plenty of other Spanish conjugations, but these are the most used ones and the most important ones. Okay, so let's jump right in. I know there's a lot on this whiteboard and it looks really overwhelming, but I'm actually going to show you that all of this stuff is pretty simple. A lot of it is just focused on memorization. Okay, so I wrote down our 4 most important tenses: the present indicative, the preterite, the informal future, and the imperfect. Okay, so first we'll take a look at the present indicative, and then we'll end with the imperfect tense. So, the present indicative, what does this mean? For example, I eat, you speak, we laugh. Now, this is in the present tense. The indicative is the mood that it's in. In Spanish, we have 3 different moods. We have the indicative mood, which states something of fact, right? Something that is undeniably true. If I say yo como, I eat, it's a fact. I eat, okay? Now we also have the subjunctive mood, which can be quite difficult for Spanish learners. This mood expresses doubt or uncertainty. And then we have the imperative, which is for commands. Okay, but here we have the indicative, which is used more often than not. All right, so I have these 3 little things right here: AR, ER, and IR. What does that mean? Well, AR, ER, and IR are simply the Spanish verb endings. So in Spanish, we have 3 different kinds of verbs: AR, ER, and IR. Okay, for example, the infinitive AR verb, infinitive meaning that the verb ends in either AR, ER, or IR. So if you hear me say that, infinitive, that just means the verb ends with AR, ER, or IR. Okay, so infinitive verb, hablar, right? To speak, okay? Hablar is an AR verb because it ends with AR. Beber, to drink, beber, right? ER verb, it ends with ER. And vivir, to live, IR verb, okay? So that's all that these mean. Now, below, these are what we call conjugation charts. Now, conjugation charts are the holy grail for when it comes to memorizing the different verb tenses in Spanish. If you can get these down, you'll be able to learn any new verb, unless it's an irregular, and you can say, okay, cool, I've just learned the new AR verb tocar, meaning to touch or to play. So I can say toco, tocas, toca, tocamos, tocan, right? So now I can say, cool, Juan toca la guitarra, right? So once I know these rules, I can apply them to any other regular Spanish verb, which is really awesome. Okay, so let's take a look. For AR, we have O for the yo, okay? So this is going to be the yo person, I. Tú, right? As, tú, this is representing the tú person, you, right? A for él, ella, usted, okay? Amos for nosotros, meaning we. And an, meaning for the ellos, ellas, and ustedes group. Now, I've put little dashes here because this is for the vosotros tense, which is only used in Spain. So we're not going to cover that. All right? So, o, as, a, amos, an. Otra vez. O, as, a, amos, an. Otra vez. O, as, a, amos, an. Okay? Yo hablo. Tú hablas. Él, ella, usted habla. Right? So when I say él, ella, usted, that just means that this verb ending right here can apply to the él person, meaning he, ella, meaning she, or usted, meaning formally you. Right? If we're speaking with someone who's older than us or a boss, we would use usted to formally address someone, aka meaning you. All right? Amos, nosotros hablamos. Ellos hablan. Ellas hablan. ustedes hablan. Okay? So those are the verb endings for AR verbs in the present indicative tense. Now, in order to conjugate verbs, which just means to take a verb from its infinitive form and put it in a new form. So in this case, we're conjugating our infinitive AR verb, hablar, into the present indicative tense. Hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, hablan. Okay? All we do to conjugate is cut off our AR ending and add our new ending. So if we take hablar in the present tense in the yo form, we cut off AR, so now we just have habla, right? Habla, and then we add on our new ending, hablo, which means to us, hey, I speak. Now, what's awesome about Spanish is that we don't have to use subject pronouns if we don't want to. What are subject pronouns? The yo, tú, él, and so on, right? So in English, we would have to say he drinks, he eats. Well, in Spanish, we don't have to necessarily add that word he. For example, if I say él come, right, that means he eats. Or if I just say come, that could also mean he eats, or she eats, or you eat. It just depends on the context clues. Okay? Next, for ER verbs, o, es, hemos, en. Very similar to our AR verbs. Okay? Now, I'd like to say, feel free to take a photo of this because these are seriously the holy grail of Spanish learning. So if you can master these, study these, get these down, you're going to be able to learn any new regular Spanish verb and be able to instantly conjugate it into the present indicative tense. Okay? O, es, hemos, en. Yo como, tú comes, él, ella, usted come, nosotros comemos, ellos, ellas, ustedes comen. Okay? Now, like I said, we don't have to add subject pronouns. So I don't have to always say nosotros comemos. It's kind of a lot. I can just say comemos. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. IR verbs. O, es, imos, en. Okay? The only change here is in the nosotros form. Okay? Imos. Okay? For example, yo vivo. Tú vives. Él vive. Nosotros vivimos. Ellos viven. Okay? So that's it. There is your present indicative tense right there. Okay? If you have any questions, you can leave me a comment asking me, hey, Nate, I didn't understand this explanation. Please leave me a comment, or you can send me an email at SpanishWithNate@gmail.com. Okay? Next, the preterite tense. The preterite is a past tense in Spanish. Now, many times the preterite and the imperfect can be confused and they're hard to know when to use which one. Basically, the preterite is a one-time action in the past. I'm trying to snap, but I just went rock climbing. My forearms are very tired here. So, the preterite tense, okay? For example, yo hablé. I spoke. Right? That one-time action. I spoke. I spoke, and now that's over with. Right? As opposed to I was speaking, right? I was speaking is going on. I spoke. One-time action. Done. Okay? So let's take a look. AR verbs. Yo hablé. Tú hablaste. Él habló. Nosotros hablamos. Ellos hablaron. Okay? Now, notice the accents here. The accents just tell us, hey, you need to emphasize where you're speaking. You need to emphasize your pronunciation. So, for example, in the el form, right? I don't say él habló. I would say él habló, right? Because yo hablo, él habló. Okay, you hear that? In this example, yo hablo, the emphasis falls on that first A. Hablo. Okay? Whereas here, it's going to be él habló. Habló. Okay? Next, ER. Okay? For example, comer. Yo comí. Tú comiste. Ella comió. Comió. Nosotros comimos. Ellos comieron. Okay? Or ellas comieron. Okay? Next, IR verbs. Remember, IR verbs or infinitive verbs just end It's either IR, ER, or AR. Okay? Okay, IR. Vivir. Yo viví. Tú viviste. Ella vivió. Or usted vivió. Él vivió. Nosotros vivimos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes vivieron. Okay? Now, you may have noticed that in the nosotros form, it's the same in the present tense, with the exception of ER verbs. Okay, so ER in the present tense would be bebemos, and in the past it would be bebimos. Okay, but for the AR and IR, when I say hablamos, that could mean we speak, or it can mean we spoke. Now, this can be confusing to us at first because how do you tell the difference? You tell the difference based off of context clues. For example, nosotros nos hablamos ahora. Okay? Nosotros nos hablamos ahora. So we speak to each other now, or we are speaking to each other now. Okay, but we speak to each other now. Versus nos hablamos ayer. Nos hablamos ayer. So we spoke to each other yesterday, right? That little word, ayer, is a trigger word to tell us, hey, you need to use the preterite here. Hablamos ayer. We spoke yesterday. Okay? Like I said, take a photo of these. Make sure you have them. Make sure you study them. These are really important. Okay, so next we have the informal future. I know I'm kind of covering it up here. So what is the informal future? Well, in Spanish, we also have what's called the simple future. The simple future is the idea of I will speak. You will eat. He will laugh. Okay, there's that little word will. Okay, the informal future would be something like I am going to eat. You are going to speak. He is going to laugh. Okay, now the informal future is more commonly used in Latin America. While the simple future is used in Latin America, you more often will use the informal future. And a lot of times for us when learning Spanish, it's just a preference thing. Would you rather say, I am going to speak or I will speak? It's up to you and it depends on what you're trying to say. Okay, but this is really easy to learn. So I'll come over here so you can see what's going on. Okay, so we have the infinitive IR verb, ir, which is an irregular. Okay, now irregulars don't apply to the charts that we're seeing here. And I've written that right here so you understand that. That irregular verbs like ir or ser do not apply to these charts. Okay, I have another video on irregular verbs that you can check out, or you can also check it out on my website, SpanishWithNate.com. Okay, so ir meaning to go, plus a meaning to, and an infinitive verb, right? Either an AR, ER, or IR verb. For example, yo voy, I am going, a, to, infinitive, comer. Yo voy a comer. I am going to eat. Okay? Yo voy a comer. Okay? Tú vas a vivir. Tú vas a vivir en Nueva York. You're going to live in New York. Okay? So that's the idea here. The informal future is awesome. It's really simple. It's just a little formula. And that's what's great about all of this. Just like in math, there are formulas to perform certain equations. It's the same in Spanish. Right? If you have the formulas down, then your life is going to be much easier because, like I said, you can learn any regular Spanish verb and instantly be able to put it into the present indicative, the preterite, the imperfect, right? So now we've got all these little formulas, all these little charts that are going to tell us, hey, this is how you say, I was speaking versus I spoke and what have you. Okay? So ir plus a plus infinitive. Feel free to pause the video right here, take a photo of this. I'll smile for you. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's move on to the imperfect. Now, the preterite versus the imperfect can be confusing for a lot of us when we're first learning Spanish. Why? Because the imperfect is also a past tense, just like the preterite. Okay, so the preterite and the imperfect are both past tenses. Now, I've made a video on the difference between the preterite and the imperfect, which you can check out on my channel. But let's take a look, okay? The difference is that the imperfect is an ongoing action in the past. For example, if we take that AR verb, hablar, again, okay, meaning to speak. If I say yo hablé, right, like we talked about, yo hablé, I spoke, right? One time action. However, if I go here and I say yo hablaba, that means I was speaking. It could also mean I used to speak. Okay? It just depends off of context clues. That's why context clues are super important for us as Spanish learners. How do we master the context clues? How do we get used to, different hints to say, all right, this is what we're talking about? A lot of it comes down to learning more vocabulary, which takes time. Okay? So let's jump right in. So, yo hablaba. Remember, to conjugate verbs, you cut off the ending. So we're going to cut off the AR ending from the AR verb, hablar, and we're going to add on the new ending. Yo hablaba. Tú hablabas. Él, ella, usted hablaba. Nosotros hablábamos. It's not hablábamos, it's hablábamos. Notice the accent here, okay? Ellos, ellas, ustedes hablaban, okay? For example, if I want to say, when they were kids, they would speak a lot, or they used to speak a lot. Cuando eran niños, hablaban a menudo. So when they were kids, they used to speak a lot, okay? All right, does that make sense? Okay? Next, ER, okay? Beber, to drink. Yo bebía. It's not bebía, it's bebía, which is why we have the accent on the I, right? Yo bebía. Tú bebías. Ella bebía. Nosotros bebíamos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes bebían. Okay? So if I want to say, for example, we were drinking water when he came in. Nosotros bebíamos agua cuando él entró. Okay? For example, entrar means to enter or to come in. Entrar. That's an AR verb, right? AR. Entrar. So when I say entró, now you'll know, right, that's an AR verb, and that's being conjugated into the present tense. Entró. Él entró. So, nosotros bebíamos agua when él entró. Okay? We were drinking water when he came in, when he entered. All right? Finally, ia, okay, the IR in the imperfect tense. Yo vivía. I was living, or I used to live. Okay? Yo vivía. Tú vivías. Él, ella, usted vivía. Nosotros vivíamos. Right? Notice the accent. Vivíamos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes vivían. Okay? Alrighty. So there you have it. Like I've written here. Study these. Okay? It's super important. Feel free to take a photo of this side of the whiteboard as well, okay? Those are the 4 most important tenses in the entire Spanish language. Of course, we have lots more tenses in the Spanish language. We've got past tenses in the subjunctive mood, and we've got the different future tense, and we've got the conditional tense. We've got all these random tenses. But if you kind of follow that Pareto principle, right, the 80-20 rule, learn 20% of the most important parts of the language, and you'll have 80% of the language. That's exactly what this is. 80% of the time when we're speaking in Spanish, we're using one of these tenses. The present indicative, the preterite, the imperfect, and the informal future. All right? Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it's been of help to you. If it has, please give this video a big thumbs up and also subscribe if you haven't already. And if you'd like to learn even more Spanish with me, you can check out my website, SpanishWithNate.com. Adios!